Okay. This Maamar is printed in Dvar Malchus. If you have Dvar Malchus in front of you, follow along there. Okay, the Maamar is from 1985. Yudal El Tashmim Hey. Let's go right to it. Ki Seitzei son you go out to war against your enemies, Hashem, your God, will deliver your enemies into your hand, and you'll take them as captives. It's known the question of our Rebbeim about this pasuk. Why does it say you'll go out to war, not against your enemies? But the literal translation of alivecha means above your enemies. You go out to war, alivecha, above your enemies. It would seem that a more appropriate language to use would be you go out to war with your enemies, or in your enemies. But why does it say on your enemies? Our Rebbeim also ask a question. The Rebbeim asked a question about the ending of that statement, and you will take them as captives. It says that in a double expression. It could have just said, you'll take captives, but it says it in a way of capture, shall you capture them, sort of. Mashmois and Yinhu, the fact that the Torah says this in a double expression seems to indicate it sounds like that this that you were taking into captivity was already captive in the hands of your enemies. In other words, you are taking something which was captured and you're recapturing it from your enemies and you're capturing it back. That's what the pasuk sounds like. You and you will capture that which has been captured from you. We need to understand this does not seem to be the way that wars are run. When you fight a war against your enemy, so what happens? You take from your enemy what your enemy what belongs to your enemy. That's what happens in a regular war, not necessarily what your enemy has captured. So why does the Torah here specifically say you're going to capture from your enemy's captives? What does that mean? We also need to understand what the Torah says further on in these verses. You'll see in captivity a woman and you will want to marry her. So before you marry her, the Torah says you must shave her head and you must let her cry for her father and mother for 30 days. And the question is, what do all these things mean spiritually? To explain what this means, the answer is, warning, was machter. What's the meaning of going out to war against your enemies? No, I didn't bring the coffee down.
It's okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. So this pasuk is also an instruction to every single Jew. And in all times. The word Torah means instruction. So the entire Torah, since Torah means instruction, so everything in Torah is a lesson. The Torah is called an inheritance to the congregation of Jacob, which means Torah is given as an inheritance to every single Jew. So, and since the Torah is called the Torah of life, that every word in the Torah and the essence of Torah has a lesson in life. And so whatever we were reading in the Torah, including this idea of going out to battle, This is an instruction in the life of every Jew. So there must be something here which is relevant to all of us because it's part of Torah. Torah is a message for every single one of us. So you need to figure out what is this idea of taking a woman in captivity and her nails and cutting her hair and letting her cry for her father and mother. All these things have a spiritual and deeper meaning. On the bottom of the first page of the Maamar, it's printed in the Valmachos. To explain what this means in our own service of Hashem, the theme of this war in our personal service of Hashem works in the following way. Person has to conquer the material things in this world which are found outside the realm of holiness and to transform them and to bring them over to the realm of holiness. And to make them vessels for godliness, to refine the material things in this world. So they should be fitting that a godly light could rest in them. That's the war we have, to take things in this world and make them have a godly light rest upon them. Speaking of godly light, Zev, I know it's Monday, but I can still say you see the godly light in your face if you're able to reveal it. Maamar Ki Seitzei, and that's the meaning of the pasuk. When you go out to war above your enemies, what's the pasuk emphasizing? When it says going out to war above your enemies, the person goes out to war. This spiritual war, to conquer the world, to bring the world to the side of holiness, to make it a vessel for godliness. You have to know. You have to know already when you first set out in this war. When you make that first step, you have to know that you are above your enemies. You are, even before you start the war, you have to know that you have the upper hand over your enemies. You're above their enemies. There's another interesting thing I saw. It says the words Ki Seitzei take the last letters of those words, you have the word Elokecha. Because Hashem, the end of those letters, which means in the end of the day, you're going to win. God's on your side. So that's how you have to feel, that's what's going to happen. You have to feel that already when you start. He says, when you go out to war, you have to feel that you're going to win. You have the upper hand. As the previous Rebbe said, that when a soldier goes out to war, it goes out to war with a niggin of victory, and it's the niggin that makes him victorious. Your very departure out to war, to conquer the things in this world, to make them holy. Why are you doing this? You're doing this because that's what the Torah commanded you to do. You say to him, the Torah says, go out to war. You're going with the power of Torah. Therefore, there aren't two equal sides of the battle that are fighting against each other. You are, to begin with, way above your enemy, because you have the benefit of going with the power of Torah, power of Hashem. So it's not two sides. You have to feel when you go out to war, there aren't two sides. And although Rashi says that this pasuk is not referring to an obligatory war, a mechamas mitzvah, a war that Torah commands you to fight, rather, mechamas choiva, an obligatory war would be like a war that Joshua fought to conquer the land of Israel. A mechamas reshus, a voluntary war, is when the king decides he wants to widen the borders of Israel, and therefore he sets out to war against his enemies, that is a voluntary war. It's not an obligation. There's also a spiritual counterpart to do these two kinds of wars, the obligatory war and the war that you have permission to fight. And since what we're discussing here is Mechamas Reshus, a voluntary war, so it seems that you don't have that advantage of going because the Torah commanded you to go. This is voluntary. But let's explain what this means in our own service of Hashem. What is the meaning of a voluntary war in our service of Hashem? There are things in this world which are permissible. They're permissible for us to eat, They're permissible for us to enjoy. So those things which are not holy, they're the word reshus. Reshus means permission. It also refers to things which we have permission to use. So in the context of the Torah's literal translation, the Mechamas Reshus means a voluntary war. In the context of our service of Hashem, Mechamas Reshus means those matters which are called Reshus, those matters which are called kosher, which are optional. There's no obligation for me to eat certain things, enjoy certain things, but they're optional. So what's my war about those voluntary things? My war about them is to use those things which are kosher, no obligation to have them, and to use them for the sake of Hashem. As the Torah says, and all of your actions should be for the sake of God, and all your ways you should know God. The Torah emphasizes it's your deeds, which means they're not holy deeds. We're not talking about mitzvahs. It's your ways, which means there are things which you have permission to use. There's no obligation for you to go there. So in all of your deeds and all of your ways, you have to know Hashem. So even in this kind of war, when you're dealing with mundane things, you're still you're still above your enemies. You're above the enemy that you're fighting with. You have an advantage over all of the material things that you're dealing with. The reason you're above your enemies is because the Torah also mandates our involvement in the mundane. Look at Rashi's words. It's just fascinating. Rashi says, the Torah is speaking about a voluntary war. The Rebbe translates this in a spiritual way. We're talking about a war with the things you have permission to use, the mundane things. The Torah talks about those things. Don't think that the things that you're involved in, the physical things, are not part of the book. You are also commanded and empowered by Torah to engage with material things. Even regarding the mundane things, the Torah talks about them. What's fascinating over here is that the literal translation is meant to just say, this is what the verse is talking about. And the Rebbe is translating this to mean, the Torah talks about the mundane. The Torah also has a message for you about the mundane. And since the Torah talks about this, you're in the book, therefore you're above your enemies. Hear what the Rebbe is saying, Dr. Ressman. The Rebbe is saying that you think you're involved in the Gashmistic thing. You think you're involved in something because you want to be involved. You are going with your family, you're driving around, you're looking for a parking space to go to a burger bar. And going to a burger bar because that's what your your grandson says he likes burger bar. So you're looking for a parking space, you're circling around, you think like, okay, I'm just doing something that I like to do. I take my grandchildren out on Sunday, out to a burger bar. The Rebbe is saying, you're in the book. This is the book. It's not a mundane thing. You are involved in mundane things. You're in God's book. God's talking about it. Therefore, you're empowered in this mission of yours to burger bar to be, the coffee's still upstairs.
Okay, good.
To be above your enemies. You're totally in control over here, even though maybe some of those things in that some of the items in the menu look really enticing and look like they only could talk to the most mundane part of yourself. So it says you're above your enemies.
Is this a war for wheat and straw, or if you want to acquire water rights to a valley? What are we really talking about? What wars have the Jews gone out of? Major wars.
I know this sounds like this is the subject,
yeah.
But we're in a different plane. Just to suffice it to say that the Talmud says that before King David would go out to war, he would talk to the Jewish court, and in one exchange in the court was the bit that's been given to the lion doesn't satisfy the lion, so we can't survive this way. So, but it's a very valid question for a different discussion. I'm not sure exactly what kind of war the Jews would engage with, especially it doesn't seem like just because they have it, we should go fight for it.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the going to the burger bar, where it smashes the guy in front of.
No. The burger bar, it's very simple. You're going to order a burger, not stealing the burger. But when you eat the burger is in the realm of klippas negas, in the realm of klippas, the realm of something which covers godliness. And you're saying a bracha, and you're eating it for the sake of Hashem. And you're going against the grain of the natural tendency of yourself, of a human being, to just eat it for the sake of its external offerings, which is its taste. And you're saying, no, it's the king is in the field. This is a holy event. God's talking about me now. I'm in God's zone. This is a holy zone. This is Torah zone. And you're above the enemy by your very departure being in this manner, meaning that before you go out to war, you already feel, you already know that you're above your enemy. So your victory over your enemy is also in a unique way. You have a very successful victory. Not just you're victorious, you be victorious and beaten up a lot, but the victory happens in a successful way, in a way that's awesome.
Could this be like quitting cigarette smoking?
Of course.
That would be it.
But quitting cigarette smoking, the battle there is a little more delineated. Either I do or I don't. Let's say you as a doctor tell someone they're not allowed to have cigarettes. So now it's no longer in the realm of the mundane, it's the realm of the forbidden. Okay. I'm sorry.
Where is he?
I think he was visiting in Diego.
San Diego?
UFC champion.
That's in San Diego.
Okay.
All right.
No, where are you going?
Have a seat.
You want to do me a favor, Ravi?
Yeah.
There's a shofar in my car. Go then take the shofar out and see if they need a shofar. Then tell them to wrap you up because you're going to help them out. Okay. So yeah, when you're doing something which is not kosher, right? So the Torah is talking about that. The Torah mandates certain things which are forbidden. The Torah says this is forbidden. That's easier.
Yeah.
What's unique over here, the Torah is talking about the mundane, which things the Torah doesn't seem to directly address these things. There's mundane things you could or you can't. You get whatever you want. It's up to you.
Yeah.
So here's what's unique, and the Torah says no. The Torah addresses this as well. Of course, if you're dealing with a direct enemy, which means cigarette smoking, which is bad for you according to your doctor, and therefore it's against the Torah, then of course you're empowered to go against your enemies, above your enemies, and to make it happen. The Rebbe is saying something more. Even the Torah doesn't directly address it, but if it's something the Torah wants you to engage in because it's mundane,
I found it.
want to have it?
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
All right.
Oh wow, that's just saved. Okay. The Torah continues after it says that you'll be victorious over your enemy. You're going out to war to begin with above your enemy. Therefore, you're going to be granted an unusual success. The Torah continues and says, when the son of Hashem, your God, will deliver your enemy in your hands. There are many ways you could win a war. There is a victory that can be achieved through a tremendously difficult battle. That means you're really working hard. And perach means you're not just working hard, it's backbreaking. And by working really hard and backbreaking efforts, that's how you could win. That's one way of winning. There's another kind of victory that happens without any effort. And it happens in a sort of similar way to what happens on Shabbos. On Shabbos, the Torah says you have to feel that all your work is done. Although you are in a state of war, yet you are victorious in a peaceful way, and the enemy is completely annihilated totally. So your victory is achieved without any war, just by your enemy just being nullified to you. The enemy just, I guess it's like a white flag. You just pick up the white flag and they say, we're on your side, we give up. As Chassidus explains another verse, the verse reads, God redeemed my soul from those who were against me in peace. So King David said about the war that he had with the people of Avshalom, the although there was a war, as a pasuk there indicates, mikravli, God redeem my soul in peace from those who war against me. However, how did this war happen? This war happened with a peaceful victory, without any fight. Hainu. And when we say peaceful, shalom, the word shalom is also related to the word complete. That means not only is there a victory in a peaceful way, but in a way of perfection. Although they originally came out to fight, originally there was a war, but now there's a victory, which is in a peaceful way, with a white flag. Not just it's peaceful, but it's perfect, without any effort, without anything being lost on the side of the victor. In a way that, as the Torah says about Shabbos, all your work is done without you making any effort. It sounds like this war that Chizkiah fought against his enemies. The Torah says that Chizkiah said to Hashem, my grandfather had a war, and he said to Hashem, he has no power to fight, and therefore he's going to try, but he has no power. Hashem granted him success with a little effort that he made. And then another king before me, King Chizkiah he said to Hashem, I don't have the power to even try to fight. I'm just going to daven, and Hashem, you'll win the war. Chizkiah said to Hashem, I have no power to fight or any power to daven. I'm going to sleep, and you'll win the war. That's what happened to Chizkiah. So that's what the Torah seems to be saying over here. Victory in a perfect way, without any effort. And that's the meaning of the pasuk. And Hashem, your Lord, will deliver your enemy into your hands, because your departure out to war is the way it's supposed to be. That you go with this conviction that you're above your enemies. Then your victory is also granted without any effort. You heard what I was saying, not the rest. Because you're going out to war the way you're supposed to be. You're going out to war like a winner. So the Eibusher responds to you, yeah, you're a winner. And that's what the Torah says, God will give your enemy in your hands. The word give is related to the idea of a gift. As we discussed many times, when a gift is given and there's a question about how much did the person mean when he gave the gift. So if it was a sale and the same item was at stake, the sale would be determined by the amount of money that was spent and other factors. When it comes to a gift, the borders aren't as hard and fast. Their borders are a lot softer. We say probably when a person gave a gift, he gave it with a good eye, he wanted to give more. So Hashem gives you a gift because your departure out to war is with this conviction. So I'm going to win. The Eibusher gives you a gift of victory. And it's Tzacham Ein Yafa, you win with a good eye. It means there's no effort that's needed on your part. And with Tachas Hashem, and you don't just conquer, but you conquer big in a perfect way. This is all because of the approach to the war. This is amazing. Because you're approaching the war with this kind of conviction, that causes this kind of response. It sounds very similar to a letter I think I shared with you a few weeks ago. I read this letter that said that a person's sphere of influence depends a lot upon their desire, what they want to accomplish, and their simcha, their joy, because joy breaks boundaries. So that's what it seems to be saying over here. You know this is a war you're going to win. You go with the simcha. That causes the miraculous salvation. Although the perfection of this victory is through a divine gift, only through a divine gift can this victory happen, because whatever victory a human being could achieve is limited, because a person is limited. But God's intent in creation is God's whole intent in creating the world is that the Jewish people should be victorious. Although God's assisting us in this victory, but He wants us to be involved. Just like when there is a war between two sides, when one side wins, they own all of the vanquished party's possessions. So too, when a Jew is involved in the physical things in the world, he wants to elevate them for the side of holiness. He wants to transform his environment, his neighborhood. He wants to achieve something. He wants to conquer something for Hashem and bring Hashem's. He wants to make a school. He wants to make a shul. He wants to make a new Torah class. He wants to conquer something in the world for the sake of Hashem. And he goes with the paradigm, I'm going to win. The Eibush grants him the success. It's the success of the Jew. The Jew owns something. In other words, it's not just that there's a victory. It's also now that the objects and the things that he was involved in are now in the realm of holiness. There's now a transfer of ownership. He has ownership of of this victory. And because Hashem wants that the material things in this world, the things we're discussing, should be completely in the jurisdiction of the Jew who was victorious in war, who was elevating those mundane things. It's not sufficient that God give you the help to win this war. Hashem wants a person to also make an effort. Hashem doesn't just want us to receive something as a gift from Hashem, that Hashem will make us be victorious, like the analogy I said about Chizkiah. Rather, Hashem wants us to actually go out to war because He wants us to have total ownership of the things that we are conquering. So on the one hand, it's better if God makes us victorious, because then it's a perfect victory. But on the other hand, since Hashem wants that the things in this world should belong to the Jew, so in order to belong to the Jew, it's necessary that a Jew also invests his own energy in this, in the as much as he is able in this war as well. Because if it was just about Hashem making it happen, then you wouldn't end up with any ownership of what has happened. Hashem wants us specifically to be involved. I think of it this way, or more accurately, it's not I think of it this way. I learned this the hard way many times. The Eibishter tells us to make an effort, and then he gives us success in a totally different place than our efforts. I haven't read this in the holy books about why this happens. I've just seen this happen so many times in my life. You make an effort and you plant seeds in one direction. The Eibishter says that's great. I want you to do that. I asked you to do that. And let me show you that your efforts, though I asked you to do them, aren't really going to make things happen. And therefore, the success comes from a totally different direction. You've seen this happen before? Are you familiar with this process? Okay, so that's what happens over here too. Hashem wants us to invest, and yet the success comes from Hashem in a totally different way that could possibly be by human being. The halacha describes different ways a real estate could be transferred to the ownership of a victorious warring party. And there's something called chazaka, there's something called kibush. So when does the victor in war actually attain ownership of the item at stake? Only when they actually made effort, when they were part of the war. And then you could say they conquered it in war. That's what the Torah emphasizes and says, Hashem, your God, will deliver them in your hand, and you will imprison that which has been imprisoned already. What does that mean? We asked before, it should have said, you'll take captives. Why does it sound like you're taking captives of that which has already been captured? And the answer is, so there are two ways to explain this. One way is that you're taking things away from their natural place in the physical world and elevating them to godliness. One second.
But this is a practical example.
Go ahead.
How about the war that starts every year in Jewish homes? Start cleaning up for Pesach. Okay. But the unexpected victory at the end is to bring Shalom Bayis as well, not just to clean the house.
Sounds great. Okay, we're going to get to the explaining those words tomorrow. It's a lot of a long explanation on why the Torah says it, and you will capture that which was been captured before. We'll get to them tomorrow. All right. Zaka Baruch.